The ship Vera's Light drifted silently through the cold space between stars. It was a research vessel, not a warship. Its crew of alien scientists had been studying the strange energy storms of the sector when the attack came. At first, it was only a shadow on the radar. Then more shapes appeared, raider ships, sharp and cruel like blades in the dark. The raiders struck without warning. Their weapons cut into the ship's shields. Bright sparks filled the hallways as systems began to fail one by one. The crew scrambled to stations, shouting orders in their alien tongue. Their captain, a tall figure with silver skin and glowing blue eyes, commanded them to stay calm, but fear spread quickly. They were explorers, not fighters. Against war-hardened raiders, they stood no chance. The Vera's Light shook as another blast hit. Consoles cracked, fire sprayed from broken wires, and the ship's engines groaned. Crew members fell to the ground, some injured, others struggling to rise again. Every second felt heavier than the last. "We cannot hold them off!" one officer cried. "Our shields are gone!" The captain's gaze turned to the emergency panel. His heart weighed with the decision. There was only one option left, a beacon, a signal meant for times of greatest peril. This beacon was an ancient gift, a device left long ago by another race, and it carried strange programming. It did not call for the nearest ship. It did not call for the strongest fleet. Instead, it was designed to reach someone special. The captain pressed the code. Far away, on the blue and green world called Earth, the message reached human satellites orbiting the planet. It was faint at first, almost like a whisper hidden in space. Scientists at the monitoring stations quickly realized it was no ordinary signal. The strange beacon carried words in an alien language, but when translated, the name became clear: Captain Adrian Cole. On Earth, Adrian Cole was already a legend. He was the youngest pilot to earn the Star of Honor, the only human to win 5 starfighter tournaments in a row, and the one who had completed rescue missions others thought impossible. His skill in the cockpit seemed almost beyond human, and his reputation stretched far, even into alien sectors. Adrian himself, however, was quiet about it. He lived in a small house near the spaceport, away from reporters and celebrations. To him, flying was not about glory. It was about challenge, about pushing limits no one else dared to test. He had retired from combat missions, though his starfighter Aquila X was still kept ready at the hangar. That evening, as he stood by the landing strip watching the sunset reflect off his sleek fighter, his communicator beeped with an urgent call. The Council of Earth appeared on the screen. "Captain Cole," the lead counselor said, his voice tense. "We've received an emergency request. It comes from the outer sectors. A research vessel is under attack by raiders. But here's the strange part. Their distress beacon calls for you by name." Adrian frowned. "By name?" "Yes," the counselor said. "Not Earth, not any fleet. You. We don't know why. But the aliens are in danger, and this could be humanity's chance to prove ourselves. Will you respond?" Adrian looked back at his starfighter. The Aquila X was unlike any other craft. It was small, light, and experimental, built for extreme speed and agility. Many pilots had tested it, but only Adrian truly mastered it. Still, this was no tournament, no simulation. This was real, and lives depended on it. He thought for a long moment, his eyes sharp with the weight of decision. "I'll go," he said finally. The hangar filled with sound as engineers rushed to prepare the fighter. The engines roared, wings gleamed under the lights, and the cockpit opened for its pilot. Adrian climbed inside with calm hands and steady breath. He ran his checks quickly, his mind already mapping possibilities, imagining the unknown dangers ahead. Moments later, the Aquila X launched into the night sky. The ship cut through Earth's atmosphere and entered the deep void of space. Adrian set his course toward the coordinates of the distress beacon. The stars stretched ahead like an endless ocean, and his fighter became a lonely spark moving into the unknown. Meanwhile, aboard the Vera's light, the alien crew struggled to stay alive. Hull breaches were sealed with emergency barriers, but the raiders circled them like predators waiting for the final strike. The captain looked at the dim console where the beacon had been sent. His crew stared at him, fear in their glowing eyes. "Who have we called?" one asked softly. "A human," the captain replied. His voice was filled with doubt. "One of their pilots." The crew exchanged worried looks. They had heard of humans before, a young race, not as advanced as others. Their fleets were small compared to galactic powers. How could a single human help against a swarm of raiders? Still, deep in their hearts, they hoped. Perhaps the beacon had chosen wisely. Perhaps this Adrian Cole was more than he seemed. And far away, cutting through the dark with speed no alien dared to attempt, Adrian's fighter closed the distance. Alone, unafraid, and determined, Earth's top pilot answered the call. The Aquila X moved faster than light across the silent path of stars. Inside the cockpit, Captain Adrian Cole sat steady, his hands resting lightly on the controls. His eyes never left the display in front of him. Numbers shifted, maps blinked, and the faint pulse of the distress beacon guided him toward the danger. Adrian had flown hundreds of missions in his life, but this one was different. Usually he knew who the enemy was, where the battlefield lay, and what his allies expected of him. This time, he had none of that. He was heading toward strangers in unknown space against an enemy fleet that could outnumber him 100 to 1. And yet, he felt no fear, only focus. Behind him, Earth Command followed his progress from their stations. Generals and counselors whispered among themselves, worried about the choice they had made. Sending a single man, one human pilot, seemed reckless. But then again, this was not just any man. This was Adrian Cole, the pilot whose instincts had saved entire colonies before. If anyone could make the impossible possible, it was him. Hours passed as the Aquila X slipped through hyperspace. Adrian used the time to run systems checks. The starfighter was a masterpiece of Earth's finest engineers, though many considered it too unstable for battle. Its wings adjusted mid-flight for sharper turns. Its engines burned hotter than safety limits allowed, and its weapons, while fewer than most ships, were designed for precision rather than brute force. In the hands of most pilots, it was dangerous. In Adrian's hands, it was alive. He thought back to the Council's words. They asked for you by name. That detail would not leave his mind. How could aliens he had never met know him? Why trust a human when galaxies were filled with species older and stronger? The thought pulled at him, but he did not waste energy on doubt. Whatever the reason, he had been called, and he would answer. At last, the ship slowed as hyperspace faded into normal stars. Before him stretched a broken scene. The research vessel Vera's light hung in space, its hull blackened and scarred. Fires burned across its surface. Around it, sharp raider ships circled like wolves, their weapons flashing as they prepared. For the final strike, Adrian narrowed his eyes. "Right on time," he murmured. Inside the Vera's light, the alien crew was exhausted. Power was almost gone. Medical bays were full of injured scientists. Their captain stood at the main window, staring at the swarm of raiders outside. His crew no longer spoke of hope. They waited for the end. Then, a sudden flash of light appeared. A single small starfighter emerged from hyperspace and darted toward them. The crew gasped. "Who is it?" one officer cried. The captain read the signature and felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. "The human," he said. The crew looked at one another. A lone human ship. Against so many raiders. It was madness. The raiders saw it too. Over. Their channels, cruel laughter echoed. A human toy ship, one of them sneered. The prey has called for help, and this is all they bring? Adrian ignored the voices. He rolled his fighter, sliding smoothly between two enemy ships before they even had time to react. His hands moved like water over the controls, his mind faster than the targeting computers. He fired short bursts, hitting engines with perfect aim. Two raider ships spun out of formation, disabled but not destroyed. The alien crew on the Vera's light stared with wide eyes. They had expected him to be crushed instantly. Instead, he had already broken the enemy's shape, Adrian's. Style was unlike anything they had seen before. Most pilots fought with rigid tactics, relying on numbers and steady patterns. Adrian, however, moved like no rule could contain him. He attacked from angles the raiders never considered. He twisted through their fire so close that it seemed impossible he wasn't hit. Every second he shifted, improvised, and forced the enemy to chase shadows. "Impossible," whispered one alien officer, watching his movements. "Not impossible," the captain replied softly. "Human." But the raiders were not weak. Though Adrian struck hard, their numbers pressed back. Dozens of ships tightened their formation, trying to box him in. Their leader barked commands. "Trap him! Break his wings!" Adrian's radar filled with red dots. Enemy fire blazed toward him. Yet his voice remained calm as he muttered to himself, "All right, let's dance." He pulled his fighter into a spin, diving low under the raider formation. Their blasts chased him, lighting space with deadly color. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, he flipped the ship upside down and cut sharply through their middle. The raiders' own crossfire slammed into each other, destroying two of their ships instantly. Inside the Vera's light, the aliens gasped again. To them, it looked reckless, even suicidal. But to Adrian, it was art. Still, he knew this was only the beginning. His fighter was fast, but his fuel was limited. His weapons, though precise, could not destroy the entire fleet alone. He had to buy time, keep the raiders' attention, and protect the wounded vessel until he could find a greater plan. Over the comms, he opened a channel to the Vera's light. His voice, calm but firm, filled their bridge. "This is Captain Adrian Cole of Earth. Hold steady. I'll keep them off you." The alien captain blinked in surprise. Hearing the human speak so boldly sent a strange feeling through him, something between disbelief and hope. This one human fights. "As if he commands an army," whispered an officer. The captain nodded slowly. "Perhaps he is the army." And outside, alone in the void, Adrian Cole pushed his starfighter harder than ever before. His movements were not of a man fighting for glory. They were of a man who refused to let innocence fall, no matter the odds. The galaxy would soon learn that when a human answers a call for help, even a single pilot can change the course of battle. The battle above the damaged ship burned bright against the dark sky of space. The Vera's light floated like a wounded animal, its engines weak, its shields gone. Around it, the sharp black ships of the raiders closed in, their weapons glowing, with cruel intent. But before the final strike could land, the lone human fighter cut across their path. Captain Adrian Cole moved like lightning, his Aquila X weaving through the storm of fire. His small ship darted between enemies as if the raiders were standing still. Inside the Vera's light, the alien crew gathered around the main viewing screen. They watched in silence as the human's fighter dipped, rolled, and sliced through enemy formations. Each time the raiders thought they had trapped him, he slipped free, leaving behind a trail of confusion. "He flies, like chaos itself," one officer whispered. The captain narrowed his glowing blue eyes. "Not chaos, precision. He knows exactly where he is going." The raiders, angered by his speed, tightened their formation. Beams of energy flashed through. Space. Adrian twisted sharply, rolling his ship until the blasts missed him by inches. His voice stayed calm as he spoke to himself in the cockpit. "Too slow," he murmured, pulling the trigger. Two quick shots flew out, striking a raider engine. The ship spun helplessly into the darkness, sparks flying across its hull. The alien crew gasped. They had seen many battles, but never had they seen one pilot fly like this. Their own combat schools taught caution, formation, and patience. This human fought differently. He relied on instincts, daring moves, and impossible risks. And it was working. Yet Adrian knew the truth. He was outnumbered. Every time he disabled a raider, more circled back to attack again. His fuel was burning fast. His shields were thin. He could not last forever. Still, he pressed on. He thought of the voices he had heard in the distress signal, the fear, the desperation. Somewhere on that ship were living beings who had chosen to believe in him, a stranger from another world. He would not let them down. The raiders, furious at their losses, brought forward a heavier ship. Twice the size of the others, it carried thick armor and powerful cannons. It opened fire with a storm of blasts, forcing Adrian to dodge wildly. One shot grazed his wing, shaking the cockpit. Warning lights flashed red, but Adrian's hands stayed firm. "Not today," he said quietly, pushing the fighter harder. He spun downward, pulling the raider ship into a chase. The massive vessel thundered after him. Firing again and again, Adrian guided it toward the wreckage of smaller ships floating nearby. Then, at the last second, he cut his speed, swerving sharply upward. The large raider ship could not turn as quickly. It smashed into the wreckage, explosions ripping across its hull. The crew of the Vera's Light burst into cheers. For the first time since the attack began, hope flickered in their hearts. On their bridge, the captain whispered, "One man against a fleet. Impossible." But another officer shook his head. "Not impossible. Human." The raiders, however, did not flee. Their leader barked orders across their comms, voice sharp with rage. "Surround him! Crush the insect!" Dozens of ships turned on Adrian, forming a net around his fighter. Beams of energy fired in every direction, cutting off his escape routes. For a moment, it seemed even Adrian could not break free. Inside, the cockpit, alarms screamed. His shields dropped to half. Sparks crackled from the control panel. Adrian's breathing grew heavier, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Think," he told himself. "There's always a way out." Then he saw it. A cluster of enemy ships had drawn too close together, their angles poor, their focus too narrow. Adrian smiled. "Got you." He dove straight into the trap, shocking the raiders. As their fire closed in, Adrian twisted his ship in a full barrel. Roll, diving between two enemy hulls. Their blasts missed him and instead struck their own allies. Explosions tore through the cluster, breaking the net apart. The alien crew watching from the Vera's Light fell silent. They realized what they were witnessing. This was not just skill, this was instinct beyond calculation. The human pilot was not simply flying a ship, he was rewriting the very rules of combat. For the first time, some of the crew felt shame. They had doubted him, doubted humanity. Now they saw why the beacon had chosen him, but Adrian himself did not think of glory. He thought only of survival, of protecting the helpless ship behind him. His fighter was battered, his weapons running low, yet he pushed on. Each move was sharper, each strike precise. Finally, he opened a channel to the Vera's Light. His voice, though strained, carried steady confidence. "Your ship is safe for now," he said. "But this won't last forever. We need a plan." The alien captain hesitated. To ask a human for strategy felt strange, but when he looked at the burning raider ships scattered across the stars, he nodded. "What do you suggest, Captain Cole?" Adrian smiled faintly. "First, patch me into your systems. Let's see what we're working with." The alien officers looked to their captain, unsure if trusting a human was wise. But the captain raised his hand firmly. "Do it," he ordered. He has already saved us. As the link connected, data filled Adrian's screen. He scanned quickly, shields offline. Weapons minimal, engines damaged. The Vera's light could not fight, but it could run if given a chance. "All right," Adrian said. "Here's how we get you out alive." And as the raiders regrouped for another attack, the human pilot began to craft a plan that no alien would have dared to imagine. The bridge of the Vera's light shook again as enemy fire struck its outer hull. Warning lights glowed red across every panel. The crew looked tired, beaten, and frightened. They knew their ship could not last much longer. But on the screen, before them, Captain Adrian Cole's small fighter still moved like a streak of silver lightning. Alone, surrounded by dozens of raiders, the human pilot was the only reason they were still alive. Adrian studied the enemy formations while dodging blasts that cut the space around him. His hands moved fast, guiding the Aquila X through maneuvers, so sharp they would have broken lesser ships apart. Over the comms, he spoke with calm, even though his cockpit flashed with red warnings. "Your ship is too damaged to fight, but if you can get your engines working, I can buy you enough time to escape." The alien captain looked at his crew. Engines were barely functional, but escape was the only hope. "Begin repairs at once," he ordered. The engineers scrambled, rushing to bring the engines back online. Sparks flew, tools clattered, and sweat beaded on their silver skin. Meanwhile, the raiders reorganized. Their leader, a cruel figure with scarred armor, sent a new command. "Bring in the command ship." From the shadows of the battlefield, a massive warship emerged. Its dark surface stretched like a floating mountain, bristling with cannons and armored plates. Compared to Adrian's small fighter, it was like a giant against an insect. Inside his cockpit, Adrian's eyes narrowed. "So, the boss finally shows up?" The Vera's light crew saw it too. Their hope wavered again. "That ship could crush a fleet," one officer whispered. "And we only have one human," another said bitterly. The captain clenched his fists. "That one human has kept us alive this long. Do not underestimate him." Adrian knew he could not fight the command ship directly. His weapons were too light and his shields too weak. But he also knew something the raiders did not. Humans thrived in impossible situations. He studied the field. Wreckage from destroyed raiders drifted across the battlefield, forming clouds of broken metal. Beyond that, asteroids floated in silent darkness. A plan formed in his mind. Dangerous, desperate, but possible. He opened the channel again. "Captain of Vera's Light, listen carefully. I'm going to pull the command ship into a trap. When you see an opening, take it and run. Don't stop. Don't look back." The alien captain hesitated. "A trap? With what? We have no weapons strong enough." Adrian smiled faintly. "You don't need weapons. You have me." The alien crew fell silent. His words were simple, but they carried a weight of certainty that none could ignore. The raider command ship advanced, cannons glowing. Smaller raiders formed a shield around it, protecting their leader. Adrian dove low, drawing fire away from the research vessel. Lasers streaked past his wings. He led the enemy deeper into the wreckage field. Broken hulls floated like jagged teeth. Adrian twisted between them, scraping so close that sparks trailed off his wings. The raiders followed, their larger ships crashing into debris they could not dodge. Explosions lit the dark as several fell to his trick. But the command ship pressed on, too big to fear. It fired a massive blast that shook Adrian's fighter, nearly tearing his shields apart. Alarms screamed inside his cockpit. His ship rattled, but his hands stayed firm. "Come on," he muttered. "Follow me." He sped toward the asteroid belt. The rocks drifted in slow orbits, colliding gently with each other. No sane pilot would dare to fly through them in battle. But Adrian was not like other pilots. He dove into the belt, His fighter danced between spinning stones, weaving so close the hull almost scraped. Behind him, the raiders struggled to follow. Their larger ships clipped rocks and burst apart. Yet still, the command ship came, its massive cannons blasting apart asteroids in its way. Inside the Vera's light, the crew watched with wide eyes. "He's leading them into the asteroids," one officer said. "He'll never survive," another cried. But the captain shook his head. "He is not just surviving. He is guiding them exactly where he wants them." Adrian's plan was simple. Use the asteroids against the enemy. Their heavy ship was too slow, too clumsy. If he could draw it into the densest part of the field, its own power would become its downfall. He twisted through another narrow gap, heart pounding, eyes sharp. His ship shook with every risky move. One mistake, one wrong calculation, and he would be crushed. But fear never touched him. The command ship pushed forward, smashing rocks aside with brute force. Its smaller escorts circled, firing wildly at Adrian, but each shot only destroyed more asteroids, sending fragments crashing into their own fleet. Finally, Adrian saw the opening he needed, a cluster of huge rocks drifting together like a wall. Behind them, a narrow escape path only his. Fighter could slip through. "This is it," he whispered. He dove straight toward the wall, weaving through fire. At the last second, he rolled his fighter and slipped through the narrow gap. The massive command ship tried to follow, but it was too big. The wall of asteroids crashed into its armored hull. The impact tore open its sides. Explosions rippled across the giant ship as it struggled to free itself. Smaller raiders panicked, breaking formation. Adrian pulled out of the dive and swung back toward the Vera's light. "Now! Engines at full! Get out of here!" The alien captain did not hesitate. "Engage engines! All power to thrust!" The damaged ship groaned as its engines flared. Slowly, painfully, the Vera's light began to move. With the raiders in chaos and their leader trapped, no one blocked their path. As the research vessel escaped the battlefield, the crew stared at the human fighter still dancing among enemies. Their captain spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. "This pilot, he is not like us. He fights with madness and courage together. He risks everything, and somehow he wins." One officer whispered, "Perhaps this is why the beacon chose him." And far ahead, Adrian Cole flew through the fire, his ship battered, his fuel running low, but his spirit unbroken. He had gambled everything on a desperate plan, and for now the gamble had worked. But the battle was not over. The command ship still burned, not yet destroyed. The raiders were wounded, not gone. Adrian knew this fight would test him to the very edge. Yet when he looked at the stars ahead, he smiled. Because this was where humans belonged, standing against the impossible, daring to do what no one else would. The stars burned with fire as the battle dragged on. The Vera's light limped away from the chaos, its engines weak but moving. Inside, the alien crew worked desperately, repairing systems and helping the wounded. They could hardly believe they were still alive. And yet, as they looked back through the viewing screens, their hearts sank. The Raider command ship had not been destroyed. Its hull smoked and cracked from the asteroid collision, but its cannons still glowed with power. Slowly, the massive ship pulled itself free from the broken rocks, turning its fury back toward the battlefield. "Impossible," one officer whispered. "It survived." The captain clenched his jaw. That human pilot cannot face it alone. But alone was all Adrian Cole had ever needed. His fighter, the Aquila X, was badly damaged. Warning lights flashed across his cockpit. The shields were almost gone, fuel nearly empty, and half his weapons offline. Sweat ran down his face as he steadied his breath. Every second of battle had pushed his ship closer to the edge, but he was not ready to give up. He stared at the massive command ship, its shadow dark against the stars. He knew he could not destroy it with firepower. His fighter simply was not built for that. But Adrian also knew something the raiders did not. Humans were most dangerous when the odds were worst. He scanned the command ship quickly, his sharp eyes searching for weaknesses. Every giant ship had a flaw, no matter how strong it looked. Then he found it. Near the center, where power lines ran into the main reactor, there was a vulnerable spot, small but real. If he hit it at the right moment, he could trigger a chain reaction. But there was a problem. His own weapons were not strong enough to pierce that armor. He needed more firepower. And then an idea struck him. Risky, reckless, deadly. Exactly. The kind of gamble that only a human would try. Floating nearby was the wreckage of a destroyed raider ship. Its weapons still glowed faintly with power, the systems unstable but alive. Adrian smiled grimly. "Let's borrow some extra firepower." He guided the Aquila X toward the wreck. Flying so close to broken metal was dangerous, but his hands were steady. Using his ship's robotic arm, he locked onto the raider cannon and tore it free from the wreck. His fighter shook as the heavy weapon attached beneath the wing. The systems screamed warnings. This gun was not made for his craft. But Adrian ignored the alarms. "Hold together, girl," he said softly to his fighter. "One more run." Inside the Vera's light, the alien crew watched in silence. Their screens showed the tiny human ship approaching the giant enemy once more. "He cannot mean to fight it," one officer said. The captain's glowing eyes never left the screen. "No, he means to finish it." The command ship opened fire again, beams of energy cutting across the battlefield. Adrian's fighter weaved through them, dodging so close that sparks flared off his hull. His fuel count dropped lower and lower, but his focus never wavered. "This ends now," he muttered. He dove straight at the command ship, head on. The raiders laughed at his foolishness, certain he was rushing to his death. Dozens of cannons locked onto him, firing together. The cockpit shook violently. Adrian's shields collapsed, panels burst with smoke. But he held on, forcing his ship forward. At the last second, he powered up the stolen raider cannon. The weapon roared, unstable energy glowing brighter than the stars. He aimed directly at the weak spot he had found. "Come on," he whispered. "Just one shot." He fired. The beam of energy slammed into the command ship's vulnerable section. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the armor cracked. Flames burst outward. The reactor shook violently, and explosions rippled through the massive vessel. The alien crew gasped as the impossible unfolded before them. The mighty raider flagship, the terror of the battlefield, was breaking apart from within. But Adrian's fighter had not escaped untouched. The stolen weapon overloaded, bursting into flames. The explosion rocked the Aquila X, tearing one wing apart. Adrian's cockpit spun out of control, alarms screaming louder than ever. He struggled with the controls, trying to steady the ship. His vision blurred, his body pushed against the straps as the fighter spun through space. Inside the Vera's light, the crew shouted in shock. "He's going down!" The captain slammed his hand on the console. "Lock onto his signal! Prepare! Rescue!" Outside, the raider command ship finally exploded. The blast lit up the stars, a fireball so bright it scattered the remaining raiders in panic. Without their leader, the rest fled into the void, their courage broken. The battlefield grew quiet again. Only drifting wreckage and dying flames remained. In the center of it all, Adrian's fighter drifted powerless, its engines dead, its systems failing. Smoke filled the cockpit, and his breath grew heavy. But through the haze, he allowed himself a tired smile. "Worth it," he whispered. Moments later, a beam of light reached his ship. The Vera's light, wounded but alive, had turned back. Using its tractor beam, the aliens pulled the human fighter into their hangar. Inside, medics rushed forward as the cockpit opened. Adrian climbed out slowly, bruised, burned, but still standing. His eyes met the alien captain's. "You're safe now," Adrian said simply. The captain stared at him for a long moment, his glowing eyes filled with respect. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "No, Captain Cole. We are alive because of you." The alien crew gathered around, their voices filled with awe. They had doubted him, questioned him, even pitied him at first. But now they looked at him with something different. Not just gratitude, admiration. One whispered, "This is what it means to be human." Adrian only gave a tired grin. "This is what it means to never give up." And though his body ached and his ship lay broken, his spirit burned brighter than ever. For in that moment, among aliens far from Earth, Adrian Cole had shown the galaxy what humans were truly made of. The Vera's light drifted through the silent void, its hull scarred but still carrying life within. The crew worked hard to repair systems, their voices echoing through the corridors with renewed hope. Only days ago, they had been certain of death. Yet now, they were alive, and their survival had one name tied to it: Adrian Cole. The human pilot rested in the medical bay. His burns were treated, and his bruises wrapped in clean bandages. Machines hummed around him, checking his vitals. He should have been resting quietly, but instead he sat upright, his eyes fixed on the stars outside the small window. When the captain entered, Adrian greeted him with a faint smile. "Looks like your ship still flies." The captain stopped at his side. His tall, armored frame cast a long shadow, but his eyes glowed with respect. "It flies because of you, human. Without your courage, this vessel and her crew would be nothing, more than drifting wreckage." Adrian shrugged, wincing slightly from the pain. "I just did my job." The captain leaned closer. "No, Adrian Cole, you did more than that. You showed us a kind of bravery that is rare even among warriors. You risked everything not for your own kind, but for strangers." Adrian's gaze stayed on the stars. "Out here, strangers or not, everyone deserves a fighting chance." The words spread quickly among the crew. To the aliens of the Vera's light, Adrian was no longer just a human pilot who answered their call. He had become a symbol, proof that humanity was not weak, not primitive, not small. Humanity was determined, clever, and unyielding. The message. Across the galaxy, when the Vera's light finally reconnected with its fleet, news of the battle spread like fire. Other captains and leaders gathered in great halls across the galaxy, listening to the tale of the lone human fighter who stood against impossible odds. Some doubted at first. A single human pilot, defeating the Raider flagship? Impossible. But then came the recordings. The Aquila X weaving through cannon fire, the reckless charge, the overloaded Raider weapon turned against its masters, and finally, the explosion of the flagship, brighter than any star. The evidence silenced the doubters. Whispers became discussions, and discussions became admiration. Humanity, once overlooked by many species as young and untested, had earned a place of respect. A fighter. Without a ship, Adrian's fighter, the Aquila X, was beyond repair. Its twisted frame rested inside the alien hangar, blackened and broken. Many of the crew came to look at it, touching the hull as if it were a sacred relic. Adrian himself stood before it one evening, his hand brushing the battered metal. "You did well, girl," he murmured. "Better than I could have asked." The alien chief engineer joined him. "It is finished, human. But perhaps it should not be the end." Adrian glanced at him, curious. The engineer's eyes glowed with determination. "We could build you something new. Not only ours, not only yours, but a ship forged from both. A symbol of what was done here." Adrian chuckled softly. "A hybrid fighter? Sounds risky." The engineer smiled in his own alien way. "You like risky. The honor ceremony days later, the fleet gathered to honor those who had fallen. In the center stood the crew of the Vera's Light, and beside them, Adrian Cole. The grand hall shimmered with banners of many alien clans. Voices hushed as the fleet commander stepped forward. His deep voice carried through the hall. We gather, not only to remember the lost, but to honor the living. In our darkest hour, when hope was gone, it was not one of our own who saved us. It was a human. All eyes turned toward Adrian. He shifted uneasily under the attention, but stood tall. The commander continued. This man faced an enemy none of us dared to fight. He stood alone, armed with nothing but courage, and struck a blow that saved us all. Let every world hear this. Humanity is not to be underestimated. Humanity is to be respected. The hall thundered with voices, alien tongues chanting as one. The sound shook the walls. Adrian lowered his eyes, humbled. When the captain of the Vera's Light placed a shining medal into Adrian's hands, he said softly, "This is not just an honor, Adrian Cole. This is a promise. Wherever our ships travel, your name will travel too." A new beginning. Weeks passed. The aliens worked side by side with Adrian, designing a new fighter. It combined human speed with alien energy systems, sleek and powerful. Its hull was dark, silver, its wings sharp like blades, and at its core was a reactor designed to never give up, just like the pilot who would fly it. Adrian watched as the last panel was fitted. The ship gleamed under the hangar lights. A name was painted along its side. Unity. He ran his hand over the letters. "Looks like I've got work to do again." The captain joined him, his voice warm. "Not work, Adrian. A destiny." The human spirit. That night, Adrian stood once more at the viewing window of the ship. The stars stretched endless before him, countless worlds waiting. He thought of Earth, of the people who had trained him, of the long nights in simulators and the endless drills. Everything had led him here. He was only one man, one human among many species, but he had proven something that would not be forgotten. It was not about strength of arms. It was not about advanced technology. It was about willpower, the refusal to surrender. The belief that even the smallest voice, the smallest ship, the smallest chance could change everything. And so, Adrian Cole became more than a pilot. He became a legend whispered across the stars. The alien crew would tell their children and their children's children of the day a human saved them. Other species would remember that when they looked at Earth, they were not looking at weakness, but at resilience. Adrian himself did not care for titles or legends. He cared only for flying, for protecting the innocent, for standing in the gap when no one else would. But whether he liked it or not, his name was written among the stars. Final scene. The Unity roared to life for its first test flight. The hangar shook with its power. Adrian climbed into the cockpit, the familiar hum of systems filling his ears. The alien crew gathered to watch, their faces filled with pride. The captain raised his hand in salute. Adrian smirked. "Let's see what this new girl can do." The engines flared and the Unity shot out into the endless dark. Stars streaked past, as Adrian guided the fighter with steady hands. For the first time since the battle, he felt whole again. Out there, beyond the horizon, more dangers waited, more cries for help. And Adrian Cole knew one thing for certain. Humanity would answer, because that was what humans did. They fought, they endured, and they inspired. And as the Unity vanished into the stars, the galaxy whispered the name of the pilot who had changed everything. Adrian Cole, the human who never gave up.